All right, let's dive right into a really deep philosophical puzzle, one that thinkers have been wrestling with for, well, centuries. It's a question that seriously pushes our language and our minds to their absolute breaking point. I mean, that's the fundamental challenge, right? The moment you try to talk about ultimate reality, you can call it God, the absolute, the nature of existence itself, whatever. The very second you put a word to it, it just feels like you've already missed the point. And boom, you're immediately caught in this logical trap. If you say ultimate reality is something, say, is all powerful, is all loving, you're kind of shrinking it, right? You're forcing this infinite idea into a tiny, finite box made of words. But if you say it is not anything, well, then it just sounds like you're saying it doesn't exist at all. So what do you do? How do you get out of this mess? Well, to find one fascinating answer, we're going to take a trip back to the 11th century and meet a truly brilliant Persian Ismaili thinker, a guy named Nasser Khosrow. He looked squarely at this is versus is not problem and came up with a pretty radical way out. So Khosrow's whole argument was that if you really want to get close to the concept of the creator, or the originator as he called it, you have to stop playing by the rules of our everyday language. For him, the highest form of knowing wasn't about saying what God is. It was about systematically stripping away everything God is not and then taking one final mind-bending leap. Okay, so at the very center of his idea is this key term, huwayat. You can think of it as isness. And it makes sense, right? Everything in our universe is something. A chair is a chair. A planet is a planet. But Khosrow's big insight was that this isness is always the result of a cause. The chair was caused by a carpenter. The planet was caused by gravity and matter. Everything that is depends on something else for its existence. So his logic unfolds in three beautiful, simple steps. First, he says if you say the creator is, that the creator has this huwiyat, you're accidentally making him just another caused thing in his own universe, and that can't be right. Second, if you say the creator is not, you're basically saying he's just nothing, pure non-existence, which is also obviously wrong. So the only conclusion left is that the creator must be completely beyond our little concepts of is and is not. This whole approach is known as the via negativa, or the negative path. Now, this is where things get really wild. Let's pivot. Because halfway across the world, a totally different philosophical tradition was wrestling with the exact same kind of puzzle. But they weren't looking out at the cosmos, they were looking inward, at the very nature of the self. This is the famous Buddhist doctrine of anatta, or no self, and it is a radical idea. It's the proposal that this feeling we all have, of a solid, continuous me that's like a little CEO sitting behind our eyes, piloting our body, is actually a kind of persistent illusion. So if there's no permanent self, then what on earth are we? Well, according to Buddhist thought, what we call ourself is really just a dynamic, ever-changing process. It's a combination of these 5 components, or aggregates. You've got your physical body, your feelings that pop up and disappear, your perceptions that label everything, your thoughts and habits, and the raw consciousness that's aware of all of it. These 5 things are constantly shifting and flowing. There's no permanent boss in charge. We're more like a verb than a noun. This idea of no self is a really important step because it opens the door to an even bigger, more profound concept in Mahayana Buddhism. This is the idea of shunyata, or emptiness. And this is where that same logic gets applied not just to us, but to, well, everything. This is one of the most famous and maybe one of the most misunderstood lines in all of Eastern philosophy. Now, this isn't saying that things aren't real or that the world is just some big illusion. It's actually a complete reframing of what it even means to exist. So what does emptiness actually mean here? It means that nothing, no person, no object, no idea has a solid, standalone, independent identity. Everything is empty of a separate self. Think about a tree. A tree can't exist without sunlight, water, soil, air, right? Its whole existence is completely interwoven with everything else. That's the core idea of what they call interdependent co-arising. To really make this click, let's use the classic analogy of a wave in the ocean. A wave definitely seems like its own thing, doesn't it? It has a shape, it has a beginning and an end. You can point right at it and say, hey, look at that wave. But here's the kicker. Is a wave ever really separate from the ocean? Can you take the waveness and pull it out of the water? No way. A wave's entire reality is water. It is empty of existing as some independent thing called a wave. And that is a perfect illustration of form and emptiness. The wave is the form, the water is the emptiness, and they aren't two separate things at all.
Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Drop a comment below, I'd love to hear what you think. Your support really means a lot and helps me keep creating content for you all. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And what's so fascinating is that this isn't just some Eastern or Middle Eastern idea. This exact same impulse, this deep desire to point to a reality that's beyond what our words can capture, shows up again and again all across the world and throughout history. When you lay it all out like this, side by side, it's pretty mind-blowing. Just look at the method column. Hosro's Via Negativa is almost identical to what Christian mystics called apophatic theology, the idea that you can only get closer to God by talking about what God is not. And the Buddhist deconstruction of the self is the same kind of logical negation, just applied inward. The specific goals are different: understanding God, liberation from suffering, union with God, but the intellectual toolkit is stunningly similar.
Even see echoes of this in Western philosophy. The great 18th century philosopher Immanuel Kant made this huge distinction between the world as it appears to us, what he called the phenomenal world, and the world as it actually is in itself, which he called the noumenal world. And his big point was that we can never know that noumenal world directly. It's forever beyond the reach of our senses and our reason. So after this whole journey across different philosophies and different continents, what's the big takeaway? Where do all these seemingly different paths end up pointing?
So on one hand, you've got Nezer Khosrow, who's coming at this from a theological angle. His goal is to purify the concept of God from human limitations. On the other hand, you have the Buddhist path, which is more about psychology and liberation, freeing ourselves from suffering by seeing through the illusion of the self. One is theistic, the other is non-theistic, but they both arrive at the exact same mind-bending insight about reality.
And this is the shared conclusion that just hits you like a ton of bricks. Both of these incredible traditions realized that ultimate truth can't be put into a box. You can't pin it down with a word like is or exists or self. The only way to point towards it is by showing where our own language and logic just fall apart. The highest wisdom is realizing that the destination is the point where your map becomes useless.
And that leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to chew on. If the deepest truths are found in that space beyond our concepts, beyond is and is not, beyond self and other, what does that mean for how we should live our lives and search for meaning? Maybe, just maybe, the greatest journey isn't about finding all the right answers, but about having the courage to unlearn all the questions we thought were so important to begin with.